Hello, my name is Mamie Allen, and I'm an instructor here at Ultimate Medical Academy. In today's lecture, we'll discuss the integumentary system, which deals with our hair, skin, and nails. So let's dive in. As we begin the integumentary system, we first take a look at some combining forms. And remember, these are the root words that would have the letter O added to the end. So looking at the first column of the structures, the second column would have the corresponding combining form. So for skin, we have cutaneo, dermato, as well as dermo. And this would be our body's or our skin's first line of defense for our immune system. Also, it waterproofs the body and is also that major receptor for our sense of touch. For the structure sebaceous glands, we have sebo or sebo, and this will secrete any oil to lubricate the skin as well as discourage or stop any bacteria growth. Now, sebum is also another way to say oil. That's where we have the term sebaceous glands. We also have sweat glands, and the combining form for that would be hydro. And our sweat glands would secrete sweat, and this is used to regulate our body's temperature as well as the water content and remove any metabolic waste. And then for our hair, the combining form would be pili or pilo, and this would aid in controlling the loss of body heat. And then our nails, you may see onkyo or onguo, and the functioning of the nails would be to protect the dorsal surface of the last bone of our fingers and our toes. Now we're moving to the functioning of the integumentary system. This is made up of our skin as well as its related structures, and all of these structures will perform important functions and able for us to maintain a healthy body. When you hear the term integument, this comes from the Latin word meaning to cover or to enclose. Now, as the skin is our protective barrier, it's also forming that protective outer layer that covers our external surfaces. So remember, its skin or waterproofs the body from fluid loss, and then also intact skin plays an important role in our immune system, and it does that by blocking the entrance of any pathogens from entering the body. Also, as said before, our skin aids in the sense of touch, and then it also helps synthesize vitamin D, which is an essential nutrient that we get from the sun's ultraviolet light. And then it's also important to keep in mind the average adult has about 2 square yards of skin, making it the largest bodily organ. So if you're ever asked what's the largest body organ, it would be the skin. Moving on to some normal functioning of the ears, meaning what is its purpose? One would be for air conduction, and air conduction is the process by which sound waves would enter the ear through our pinna and then travel down the external auditory canal until it hits that tympanic membrane or the eardrum. And here it's located between, again, our outer ear and our middle ear. We also have bone conduction, which is also a normal action of the ear. Here, this would occur as our eardrum vibrates, and this vibration causes our auditory ossicles to vibrate too. Now, the vibration of these bones transmits sound waves through the middle ear to the oval window of the inner ear. Now let's move into the functions of those related structures that we mentioned. The related structures of the integumentary system would be our sebaceous glands, our sweat glands, our hair, as well as our nails. So let's take a look at the first, our sebaceous glands. This would secrete that oil that would lubricate our skin and discourage or prevent any bacterial growth. Whereas our sweat glands, not only does it secrete the sweat itself, but it also regulates the body temperature, and remember, it secretes and excretes any waste from the body system. Our hair, which is also a related structure because it works closely in the integumentary system, would help control the loss of any body heat, as well as the nails being to protect the outer surface of the bones. And I think we've already covered that in a previous slide. Here we have the structures of the skin as well as some of those related structures that we just covered. Now, the skin is a complex system of specialized tissues, and it's consisting 3 basic layers. It would be the epidermis, which is the outer layer, the dermis, and then the subcutaneous layer. So let's take a look first at the epidermis. Now remember, this would be that outermost layer of skin, and you'll see it's made up of several different specialized layers of epithelial tissues. If we were to break down epidermis, epi means above or upon, whereas the root word derm or dermo, derma would mean skin, and then the suffix of is a noun ending. Now, the epidermis does not contain any blood vessels or connective tissue. Therefore, it's dependent on our lower layers for the nourishment that it needs. From looking at the right side of the slide, you can also see other structures such as the hair follicle, the duct of sweat glands. We have the sebaceous gland here, and then going further, you see the vein is there, and the vein is to provide that nourishment that's needed from those inner layers. That next layer or that middle layer is referred to as the dermis, or we also call it the corium. Now, this is a thick layer of living tissue directly below the epidermis itself. Here, it contains connective tissues, blood and lymph vessels, as well as nerve fibers. Now, keep in mind, you'll also find hair follicles, those sebaceous glands, and sweat glands, which are also those related structures of the integumentary system. Now, you may recall from the nervous system where you discussed nerves and neurons. Here within the integumentary system, we have sensory nerve endings, and this would be in the dermis, and they're the sensory receptors for stimuli such as our touch, temperature, pain, as well as pressure. Moving on to the subcutaneous layer, this is located just below the layers of the skin, and it connects the skin to the surface muscles. Now keep in mind the subcutaneous tissue or layer will be the innermost layer, and it's made up of loose connective tissue as well as adipose tissue. The term adipose simply means fat. We also have lipocytes. Now, lipocytes also are known as fat cells, and these are predominantly located in the subcutaneous layer where they begin to manufacture and store large quantities of fat. If we were to break this down, lipo meaning fat, and cytes is referring to cells or cell body. Let's now look at some of those associated structures of the integumentary system, starting with our sebaceous glands. These are located in the dermis layer of our skin, and they're closely associated with the hair follicles. Now, these glands will secrete sebum. By now, I think you know that means an oily substance, and this oily substance is released through our ducts, openings into our hair follicles. Now, from here, the sebum or the oil then moves onto the surface and begins to lubricate the skin itself. Now, because the sebum is slightly acidic, it discourages the growth of bacteria on our skin. Here we have our sweat glands, and our sweat glands are also known as the sudoriferous glands. Now, these would be tiny coiled glands that's found mostly on almost of our body's surfaces. There are two types. We have apocrine, which are found in our hair follicles, and then we have eccrine glands, and these open onto the skin and are the most numerous in our palms of hands, as well as the soles of our feet and forehead. Our sweat glands also has milk-producing mammary glands, and these are modified sweat glands. Sometimes they're classified with the integumentary system also. However, it's important to note that they're also a part of the reproductive system and may be discussed later in a different chapter. To facilitate the structure of the sweat glands, we also have our pores. And the pores would be the openings that's on the surface of the skin that act as the ducts of sweat glands, meaning perspiration would excrete from those pores. Now, when you hear the term perspiration, you may also hear it referred to as sweat. And this would be secreted by the sweat gland, as well as makes up about 99% of water, in addition to some salt and metabolic waste products as well. Here we have the hair, which is the next associated structure. Our hair fibers are rod-like structures that are composed of tightly fused together dead protein cells, and they're filled with keratin, which is a hard substance. Now, the darkness and color of our hair will be determined by the amount as well as the type of melanin that's produced by our melanocytes that surround our hair shaft. Remember, cytes refers to cell, and melano or melon refers to pigment. We also have the hair follicles, and this would be the sac that actually holds the root of our hair fibers. The shape of our follicle determines whether our hair will be straight or curly. We also have erector pili, and these would be any tiny muscle fibers that are attached to our hair follicles that actually cause the hair to stand erect. So in response to cold or fright, if you're scared, these muscles will contract, and this contraction causes raised areas of the skin, and we call those raised area goosebumps. Now, this action of goosebumps also helps the reduction of heat loss through our skin. Now let's take a look at the nails and the structures within the nail itself. So we have the unguis, and the unguis is another way to say fingernail or toenail. And this would be the keratin plate that protects our dorsal surface of the bones of our finger and toes. Now each nail will consist of these parts that you see listed here. So let's take a look at these parts individually. Starting with the nail body. This would be the translucent portion, and it's closely molded to the surface of the underlying tissues. It consists of hard keratinized plates of epidermal cells. Next, we have the nail bed, and this joins the nail body to that underlying connective tissue that nourishes the nail. Remember, the nourishment is coming from those blood vessels that gives it its pink color. Next, we have the free edge, and this will be the portion of the nail that is not attached to the nail bed, and it extends beyond the tip of our fingers and or toes. Moving on to the lunula. The lunula is that pale half-moon shaped region at every nail root that you may see, which is generally most easily seen in your thumbs. Now this would be the active area of your nail where the new keratins are being produced. Let's break this word down. The lun means moon, and the suffix of ula means little. We also have the cuticle, and the cuticle is that narrow band of the epidermis tissue that's attached to the surface of our nail, and this would occur just in front of the root, and its purpose is protect that new keratin as the cells are forming. And then last but not least, we have our nail root, and this fastens our nail to the fingers or toes by fitting it into a groove within the skin itself. And then there in the center, we have the bone of the finger, and we can see the bone is surrounded by those associated structures of the nail. Now let's move into some medical specialties that are related to the integumentary system. And remember, medical specialties will be referring to physicians that specializes in this particular system. So the first we have would be a dermatologist. And a dermatologist would be a physician who specializes in diagnosing as well as treating disorders of the skin. So if we were to break down the term dermatologist, dermato means skin, and then ologist is the suffix that means specialist. So we have dermatologists. We also have a plastic surgeon, and this would be one who specializes in those surgical restorations as well as reconstructions of our body structures. The term plastic is related to the suffix plasti, which means surgical repair. Now, we also have cosmetic surgeons, and this would be for any elective procedures, meaning procedures that the patient decides to have, but they may not be an actual medical necessity. Sometimes cosmetic surgeons will perform varying operations. Some may be breast augmentations, liposuction, facelifts, and other aesthetic procedures. Now in today's lecture, we review different anatomical structures that are relating to the integumentary system. Remember to look at those prefixes, the combining forms, as well as the suffixes to create new words. Good luck in your studies this week. Thanks for joining me today.